don't want to talk about Raid Shadow Legends? You want to talk about Raid Shadow Legends? Let's talk about motherfucking Raid Shadow Legends, because I know everything there is to know about Raid Shadow Legends. This is the Raid Shadow Legends world map. It's being projected onto my 70-inch TV, which a I recently started humming an old internet goldie in the back of my head that I hadn't heard for many years, and out of curiosity, I decided to revisit it. And that song was the always classic Chocolate Rain. What's fascinating about Chocolate Rain is that the lyrics are actually very deep and intense. And that's something you don't really come to expect from an old internet meme song. The song is about one clear topic: the existence of systemic racism in the United States and how it constantly exists around us, yet no one is willing to admit that it's there.
Chocolate rain, some stay dry and others feel the pain. Chocolate rain, a baby born will die before the sin. Chocolate rain, the school books say it can't be here again. Chocolate rain.
Chocolate rain is something that devastates many people, but is ignored by those who don't seem to be affected. People who prefer to build a tent and say the world is dry. I think one of the most shockingly direct parts of the song is where the speaker literally states,
The Belka blames the baby's DNA. Chocolate rain, but test scores are how much the parents make. Chocolate rain.
and it's just fascinating to me that this became one of the most famous songs on the entire internet, and entirely because people liked the loopy tone and thought that this guy's voice was funny. But it's also this deep and incredibly insightful piece of poetry that has so much to say outside of just being a meme. Anyways, once that song was done playing, Spotify decided to play me this. This simplistic tune immediately uncovered long-buried memories of a man who was once worshipped by me and so many of my friends. Someone who didn't just have one YouTube series that was good or one YouTube channel that was watched,
Don't play the
but
champion
almost
the day
an
it's released,
entire
kids.
overgrown YouTube empire of content. What happened to this mysterious traveler who went from YouTube god to unknown in mere moments? The answer? I don't really care. But it does seem like something that someone should make a video about.
He is so low, wow.
Not me. No, seriously though, seriously? Not...
One of the things about my job is a lot of the work happens at night. I will spend hours hiking in the
You know what I'm
rainforest
saying?
with just a headlamp on my head. With
I'm
Vision
drinking some
ICL,
Pepsi.
my eyes are now clearer than ever at night. Everybody's trying to be the one to spot something new, to see that exciting thing that other people haven't. And now I have this ability even better than I've ever had in my entire life.
There will be parties again soon, and family gatherings. There will be parades, and sporting events, and
I'm
concerts.
not too fast, but I can
To
just
help
auto
our
it down.
communities when they come back together, respond to the 2020 census now. Spend a few minutes online today to impact the next 10 years of healthcare,
I could have taken that
infrastructure,
word, but I
and
just want
education.
Scuttle.
Go to 2020census.gov and respond today to make America's tomorrow brighter. It's time to shape our future.
No, I want it. Yes. Wait, does she old? I thought her dash was old.
Okay. Let's do
Jeez,
this.
a lot of Ranger League.
So whenever I end up doing a video like this where I'm not quite sure what I'm going to say, one thing that does really help me sort through the mess are fan-curated archives of specific topics. A good rule of thumb is that if the topic you're researching was popular enough
They're
5
mainly
years
the
ago,
Pokemon
it
trends.
has a wiki. There's a Club Penguin wiki. There's an anime bath scenes wiki. There's a
Get it?
Chick-fil-A wiki
Sorry, my
for all
voice is
your
kinda hoarse.
Chick-fil-A lore. But of course, today we're going to be talking about the Wikitubia page
I don't
on
think she had
Tobuscus.
my
The
phone.
thing about wiki pages that people don't understand is that they take a lot of dedication to work on. So if you're writing a wiki page, you really care about that topic one way or the other. So if you're a famous person with a wiki page, that page is only going to be updated really when a certain person or a certain group of people really care about you. For instance, last time I checked my Wikitubia page, I'm pretty sure it was mostly some guy documenting every time that I had ever criticized Ben Shapiro. And I like to think he still keeps that updated. Like, just every time I make fun of Ben Shapiro on Twitter, he types a little new subsection. If that isn't the case, I would very much like you guys to make that the case. Hey internet, Ben Shapiro is short and he's a dumb bitch. Go add that to my wiki. Anyways, the reason I'm saying all this is that I really fell in love with Tobuscus's wiki page because it reads like it was written in 2012 and then just like it was lightly updated as years went by. Toby's main channel, Tobuscus, is currently one of the top 500 most subscribed channels on YouTube. That's not true. Most of Toby's viewers are young, between ages of 12 to 20. But he is still enjoyed by other age groups. Most people in his vlogs, which are often recorded in public spaces, are often confused as they just see a man talking and recording himself. Occasionally in his
Oh, they
vlogs,
put a
he
Diana
runs into
in my
some
journal.
fans who are usually in shock to see him and meet him. Most famous
Oh, I should
Toby
have hit the
Games
golem
quotes. What the hell? I'm dead. Suck it. Oh my god. God dang it. Holy mother of. What a bunch of balls. Who's yo daddy? Son of a biscuit. Don't make it awkward. This is the time. Booyah. These are really starting to sound like just things Sonic the Hedgehog would say just whenever you're running around as him. Okay, and here's the only one I remember. Bless your face if you sneeze during this video.
Bless
you. I remembered that quote, but honest to God, I thought it was something Philip DeFranco used to say. Toby's popularity can be attributed to his constant ability to be funny and his amazing skill at improv comedy. He is also a talented musician.
Oh,
Although
goodness.
Toby is 31 years old, he is still young at heart, which is why he attracts a younger audience. He frequently sings in his videos, though this is still unconfirmed. What does that mean? So when you look at Toby Turner's existence online, it starts off ridiculous and kind of cringy in a 2010 way, but then it gets really dark and upsetting and kind of hard to deal with. So the start of this video is kind of lighthearted. I make a lot of jests at this fellow who I'm not fond of, but then at the end, things get dark, and I just wanted to give everyone a warning that that's going to happen. So I ended up deciding not to invoke a sponsor on this one because of how the ending of this video is. But I thought it would be fine if at the start of the video I sort of briefly plugged my Patreon. I really want to get to a point in my career where I don't have to worry about how well a video does or how well a sponsor does, where I can just sort of wake up one morning and go like, this month I want to do a 7-part political video essay on the Love Bug movies, and I can do that because I already have all of my financial backing behind me. And Patreon is really the best way to go about having that. This has turned out to be a much more rough month financially than I expected it to be, and not just because it's the holiday season. My roommate moved out more quickly than he was supposed to. In fact, the way I found out that he had moved out is one day I noticed all his furniture and role-playing books were gone, and that's how I pieced together that we no longer live together. So the very little that he had been putting into the household budget every single month, I'm now covering myself. On top of that, I'm currently moving to another apartment, which costs the same, but is much better. But I got moving fees, I got pet fees, I gotta get some new furniture. Also, my editing computer just kind of croaked, so I need to either get it replaced or repaired, essentially this month so I can file it. Also, my bed frame, it broke, so I need to get a new one of those. I've kind of just been sleeping with my bed on the floor, which is really uncomfortable. Basically, any way that you guys can support me in any small way, or even just by watching my videos, really helps me out this month, and I can't thank you guys enough. And now that that's over with, let's meet Tobuscus.
Forgot how good Vane's name was.
When it came to my weight, I was told to eat less and just move more.
The weight always came back.
Just eat
That's
less for
because
it.
it's not just about my willpower. There's a science to obesity.
That's why my healthcare provider added Saxenda to my weight loss plan. It helps me eat fewer calories by working like one of my body's appetite hormones so I can lose weight and keep it off.
Toby Turner first started posting to YouTube in early 2006. These periodic uploads would feature skits Toby had created with friends alongside random videos of him playing music. One of the first original songs he ever uploaded was titled Re Your Brains, and was a parody of the Jonathan Coulton song about an office worker turned zombie.
And I plan on eating you slowly. All we want to do is eat your brains. We're not unreasonable. I mean, no one's gonna eat your eyes.
Toby brilliantly rewrote the song to instead be from the perspective of the person the zombie is talking to.
Bob, I know your sex appeal has never been that grand, but I can tell that things have worsened since the marching band. 'Cause I can see right through that shotgun blast-sized hole in you. All you wanna do is eat my brains, which is understandable. They are a little oversized.
I'll do classical gas.
They're angry.
One bizarre thing I discovered while looking through these early unseen videos was a series Toby created called Candy Planet, which revolves around a world where all of the people are candy and they go on adventures or something.
Well, so, hello, ladies. We're twins, but we're drunk. So we're lesbians. Could I mayhaps interest you in some coitus? Theo.
I think he envisioned this as his channel's flagship series because he made more than one, and they introduced plot threads that are never concluded and he never does anything with. I don't think he had any jokes prepared for this other than the fact that the main character is a chocolate bear and he's been adopted by 2 male gummy bears. So the only joke he really does is doing stereotypical gay voices for the dads and a black voice for the chocolate bear.
Man, I don't need no goddamn school shit. Son, you're black. I think what your other dad is trying to say is you're adopted.
He also started a series known as Russians Review, where he and an associate would play 2
Okay,
Russian
just
characters
Boston,
who would
please.
review popular movies.
I give her body 2 eyebrow up.
How? You only have one.
You do.
2 videos specifically ended up pointing to a more clear direction on the channel. The first was called Googling Boobies, and is one of the earliest videos on the channel to have ever broken 1 million views.
Yeah, it's free. Bye-bye.
I already know
I wanted to wait till minions were done.
boobies. I have come for your soul.
Satan?
I'm pressing my hot man banana up against your door.
Dad?
This is absolutely classic YouTube clickbait. You don't see a lot of great videos like this getting popular anymore these days. Hint to the person scrolling by that they might get to see a pair of bare breasts if they click on the video for a moment.
and then show an annoying skit with some guy where he makes a bunch of jokes about penises. Then there was Toby's first big music hit, I Threw It on the Ground.
I threw it on the ground. Do I look like I have a job? No, I ain't going to no lost marathon.
I know what you're thinking. Wasn't that an SNL thing? Yeah, it was. But also he did it. This was back when responding to a comment made a completely new comment. So if you scroll down, you'll be graced with the sight of dozens of detached comments from Toby all in a row, cut out of context from conversations that he must have been having at the time, left bouncing into nothingness like a lost echo in a one-sided conversation.
I think this is worded.
After this, he continued his music parodies, throwing a few viral remixes into the mix, and eventually creating the concept of dubbing over a trailer with lyrics literally describing what was being shown.
Dakota's now legal in 31 states.
This would soon prove to be one of his most
Jump on the
impactful
Diana
projects. Literal trailers aren't really as clever as I thought they
Unbelievable.
were at the time. It's basically him mimicking the already in existence trend of making literal videos, where people would dub over surreal music videos of the 1980s so that the song was specifically made to match the visuals.
You guys gonna get an ass full of pipe wreck.
I can't auto with it.
Literal trailers were sort of the same thing, except nothing about these trailers are nearly as visually bizarre as the music videos which were usually covered. So he usually is just describing very mundane things that aren't immediately funny. His trailer for Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is one of his most popular videos, and is also how I remember originally coming across him for the first time. Toby then went on to create Cute Win Fail, a show where he would show and comment on viral clips from the internet. It was like Equals 3, but less funny. Cute Win Fail and literal trailers are perhaps two of the greatest examples I've ever talked about on this channel of creations that have lost any and all value as time has gone by. They're both based around the internet's current cultural investment. So if you haven't recently seen a trailer for a Twilight movie or a viral clip from 2010, these two shows will have absolutely nothing to give you. Toby doesn't really add any charm to the experience. There's nothing clever about these. It's just a lot of him piggybacking off of pre-existing material.
But it was in 2011 that Tobuscus started what I believe to be his most inexplicably worthless series. It's called Hot Symphony. This is what constituted as comedy in 2011.
Around this time, Toby also seriously started to expand his horizons outside of his regular skit and music content, also creating regular vlog and Let's Play channels. Toby was one of the first YouTubers to both start a Let's Play channel and have their Let's Play channel become just as popular as their regular content. Toby was heavily influential in his introduction of Happy Wheels playthroughs, and he was also arguably one of the first people to fully buy into the craze of both Minecraft Let's Plays and Minecraft tie-in comedy videos. God, I have absorbed so much of this man's content, but at the end of the day, I can't justify why I've done it, so I just have to presume that everything I'm saying right now isn't super boring.
Okay, time for me to just flip up on the sip soup. I'm gonna sip some soup while I'm flipping the floop. Oh, good. Get the goop off my soup. Ah! I love tables. Yeah, man. This is a bobsled, man. I'm sledding the bob. Oh, I broke my sled. Now what is Bob going to do?
2011 was a damn good year for Tobuscus. First of all, it was then that the Tobuscus Animated Adventures first premiered. Brought to life by a fan by the name of Gonzosum, the series proves to be really charming and funny, at least partially because there's a greater balance to Toby's energy. The animation's timing is really on point, and Gabe Uskis' straight man persona really gives the show that comedic flair that most of his other videos lacked. The animated Tobuscus spinoff was clearly introduced as a one-off fun video showing this unique concept, but it became such a hit that it was easy to fund more episodes, many of which today sit at over 10 million views. It also quickly evolved into just being poorly disguised ads for things Toby had been hired to advertise, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Because 2011 was also when we first saw Tobuscus shed his skin and become a music YouTuber.
A lot of people in this city want me dead. And Black Mask. He's after all of us. We're gonna have to work together.
Oh wait, that's enemy.
Harley Quinn, Bird of Prey, own the digital movie now.
Oop. Could do a Q flash. Oh wait.
I have this memory in the back of my mind, which I might have facilitated over the years, but I believe must be real in some way. Me and my childhood friend, the only person I've really known my whole life, we were hanging out outside of school one day, and we had these school issued iPhones, so we both started
That looked
playing
pretty good as on
Minecraft
his
on
back.
it. Now, this
Really
was
helped
the
a little bit
app
extra,
version.
0.5 seconds.
Neither of us had paid for the full package, so we couldn't save, and as far as I remember, we couldn't play in the same world, so we were both independently creating our own little civilizations right next to each other in this free version of the Minecraft game. And at some point, I think he turned to me and he said, "Hey, have you heard Nugget in a Biscuit?" And I went, "Yes,
Just want to get this.
but I'd like to hear it again." And so he went to the YouTube app, which came pre-installed on all iOS devices, and he pulled up a playlist of Toby Turner's greatest hits. And he continued to play that in the background of his Minecraft game, because back in the day, before YouTube tried to monetize YouTube, you could do that for free. And so the two of us sat there, being the best of friends in the golden years of our lives, listening to this garbage. Saying that Nugget in a Biscuit exists is already saying one sentence too many about Nugget in a Biscuit. But at this point, I kind of have to stop and linger on it, because Nugget in a Biscuit is essentially Toby Turner's main modern legacy on the internet. Not only is it true that the last time I thought about Tobuscus, I was thinking about Nugget in a Biscuit, it's true that the last 10 times, the last 15 times, the last 20 times I thought about Tobuscus, I was thinking about Nugget in a Biscuit. And so I have to extend this segment out to be relatively proportional to its importance in his legacy today, but I have to do it in a way that doesn't really say anything inherently important.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Cooking with Quentin. Today we're going to be making the Nugget in a Biscuit from Nugget in a Biscuit. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by prepping the mashed potatoes. Take 3 raw potatoes and peel them like I have here, then cut them into cubes. Next we're going to take a large pot and fill it with water and a touch of kosher salt. The fact that it's kosher is important enough to mention every single time I use any salt in any recipe. Once the water's going, we're going to add in our potato cubes and let it boil for about 15 minutes.
Does your battery deliver extra life or extra power?
Extra life. Extra power. Extra life. Extra power. Extra life.
Next we're going to put 1 cup of milk and 2 tablespoons of butter into a saucepan. Once the butter is melted, we can add in our recently drained potatoes and start mushing them into the mix. slowly stirring until it all starts to condense. And voila, you've got yourself some mashed potatoes. Next, you're going to work on the nugget and the biscuit. Now personally, I studied the nugget and a biscuit video frame by frame for 72 hours straight, and I came to the conclusion that these frozen pre-made biscuits were a good option for the first half. But the nugget was a little harder to figure out because the nugget in the video is as big as the biscuit. I ended up placing several nuggets on one biscuit. I know this is controversial, but I felt it would be the best compromise in the situation. Lay your nuggets across the baking sheet, put the package away, and then get it back out to read the instructions. Then place them in your oven at 400 degrees for about 11 to 13 minutes. When your food is ready, pick your oven mitt off the floor and quickly dust it off before you set your food to the side. At this stage, you take your nuggets and you put them in a biscuit. Then you dip the whole thing in mashed potatoes. Well, the song says you dip them, but in the video it looks like the potatoes have been poured over. So I'm actually going to sort of spoon a little mashed potato onto the side here, with a little piece of butter for decoration. And of course, you can't forget to take your mashed potato covered chicken nugget biscuit and dip it in the barbecue sauce. Or pour the barbecue sauce. Once that's done, you're ready to eat.
Oh yeah, I gotta get the red trinket.
This is so bad.
It's pretty good, but let's see if we can improve on this recipe. Take some fresh cilantro out of your fridge and begin beating it with a large hammer.
Oh fuck.
This
that's
isn't
Indonesia.
actually part of the recipe. I just really hate cilantro. So let's start out by making some biscuits from scratch. Take a large bowl you bought on clearance after Halloween, and whisk together 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons baking powder, 1 tablespoon sugar, and 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. Then use a box grater to shred a stick of butter over the bowl, making sure of course that the butter is thoroughly cold and stiff beforehand. Quickly toss this together with your hands, and then struggle pathetically to unlock your phone without direct access to your fingertips. Make a small indent in the center of your dough and pour 1 cup of very cold buttermilk into the mix. Once it's barely starting to come together, place it onto a parchment paper covered area and form into a 1-inch thick rectangle. Fold twice, like you would a piece of paper you're putting into an envelope, then roll back into the original size. Repeat this process twice. Now this recipe is much more time consuming and expensive than the one we did before, but the good news is that the output will literally be exactly the same. Once your dough has been rolled and pressed 3 times, you're ready to begin cutting out your biscuits. While most recipes advise for a biscuit about 2 inches across, I actually am going to be trying to make the biscuits as small as possible. My thought process is that instead of trying to make the nugget bigger to match the biscuit, it would be much easier to just make the biscuit smaller. Now that your apartment smells like rotten milk and you look like a really snobby Coke dealer, let's go ahead and get started on our nuggets. This time around, I decided to make the small change of using these vegan nuggets. Back when I was trying to be a vegetarian, I would always buy these, and they're pretty much the best home-cooked nuggets I've ever had. After around 22 minutes, your biscuit should be ready to pull. So we have our nugget and a biscuit, but instead of dipping it in mashed potatoes and barbecue sauce, I thought it would be better to instead put a little caviar on the top. Just a little. Yeah. There we go, that's good. And yeah, it's pretty good now. What do you know? One of the big things that makes Toby Turner noteworthy is that as a YouTuber, he actually managed to get a lot of gigs outside of the website. You see, around this time, internet sensations were a new and exciting thing, and networks wanted to experiment with bringing them on board to mainstream projects to market to younger generations. And Toby Turner seemed to be one of the most fresh, most popular, and most safe brands to invest in. And so, he was invited to take part in a lot of these concepts. He was in The Annoying Orange Show, a program that ran on Cartoon Network despite not being a cartoon. I always presumed the show was some sort of bad sitcom when I heard about it, but I watched a couple episodes, and it's just Annoying Orange YouTube episodes, but with a higher budget. Toby would play a character called Nerval, a worker at a fruit store who can see and interact with the fruit, and I don't have anything else to say about it, He was in an episode of Law & Order SVU where the writers were trying to write about Gamergate, but they invited, like, Logan Paul on for some reason. Like they were like, we're gonna write about Gamergate, get Logan Paul and Tobuscus into this show.
Alright, you need to think really carefully about what you're doing right now.
Talk, officer!
He had a role in the film Smiley, which looks like a movie that exists. He was hired to make a series of linking segments for Cartoon Network with his dog that would transition from one show to the next. Also, he got to make a Terminator movie that they let him put Arnold Schwarzenegger in to advertise for Terminator Genesis, and he played one of the Terminators. If this movie isn't fully and concretely documented on the Terminator Wiki, I'm gonna be pissed. Oh, did you guys know that the Annoying Orange did a Harlem Shake video? You do now. Oh, look, in the middle, there's Toby. It's the excuse I'm using to torture you with this. He voiced Ant-Man in a Marvel phone game, which has no cultural importance other than the fact that he was in it, and then he wasn't, which is an incredibly low bar of relevance. And of course, he recorded a series of Hot Pocket commercials, which were really the last time I ever heard about him.
Just take it out of the box in about 2 minutes. Well, bam, slam,
Autoing the camera.
Those hot pockets sure are pretty hot. Blow on it, Wanda. Blowing on your hot pocket. You're welcome.
Although I do know that he had made some sort of mobile game since then that doesn't look good. The point you can gather from all this is that Toby was everywhere, and that his mainstream influence was still growing even when his channel views started to falter in years after this. But all of this would change in 2017, during an event that would shock the internet and cause controversy for years to come.
When it goes super tanky damage thing.
Man of Gotham.
Go show those little birds I own this town.
Who's having a good time?
Ladies, we're gonna have to work together. Would you? Hi, boys.
Yeah, I'll just run it down. I'm not gonna farm anymore. You gotta be in.
So the inspiration for me wanting to make this video is legitimately the story that I told in the start of the video. I was listening to music on Spotify and Nugget and a Biscuit came up without me asking it to. And, you know, it brought back all these memories and I just started thinking about like how much of a horrible person Tobuscus is. And I just suddenly wanted to do a video making fun of him. But I also realized while working on it that making all of it this, you know, lighthearted romp at his expense and not stopping and getting a little serious at the end would be really heavily irresponsible for me to do as a creator. Okay, so a big content warning at this point because I'm going to be talking about abuse, I'm going to be talking about drug abuse, I'm going to be talking about sexual abuse, just a lot of heavy stuff that will probably not.
I'm moving, so I'm changing it. It's a good thumbnail.
Audiences, be it fans of those guys or people who wanted to justify hating those guys. And one day I had this idea where I could do a video instead about YouTube channels that I used to watch when I was a kid. And so I started writing it. It started off at 10 pages, and then it was 20 pages,
Maybe I'll go
and then it was
Titanic, 'cause
60
I do have a lot of
pages.
help.
And by 2018, I had decided to make it its own standalone series. Specifically, I wanted it to be a 15-episode series covering every notable forgotten YouTuber I could think of, and in chronological order. We'd start with Ray William Johnson, and then the final episode would be about Leafy is Here. But then there'd be a bonus episode about regular celebrities who started off as YouTubers, and then that'd be it. I just stopped doing the show. But as I continued to do YouTube over the years, it quickly became apparent that Fallen Titans was my flagship series. Whenever I would do a video for that show, it would do crazy well, and all my other content would then do okay, just by association. And I sort of realized that if at any point I ended the series, it could potentially be the death of my channel, even if it wasn't making me happy to keep doing it anymore. It's probably not a good idea to ever talk about this, ever, like ever, but a couple of years ago, I was #canceled by the commentary community for saying that Ben Shapiro is bad, and saying that I said transphobes should fuck off and unsubscribe. Oh yeah, and then there was like a thing with a monkey. Basically, I said a series of hot takes which were extraordinarily controversial for the 5 whole months between when I said them and when everyone else started saying them. In the aftermath of this, my comment section, my Twitter, every place was flooded with these pre-programmed fans repeating the same things every single day. You're a Fallen Titan now, Quentin. Make Quentin reviews Fallen Titans. And after a while, this really started to bother me. And it wasn't the implication that I had fallen, because I really didn't give a shit about that. What bothered me was that I never got to the point where I started feeling like a Titan. I always just felt like a guy. Like, you understand that the implication of calling me a Fallen Titan is that at some point there must have been like a 1-week period where I went from guy to Titan and then immediately to Fallen Titan. Why did no one tell me? I would have had friends over or something. But it was too late. I had missed my window. I am become Fallenist of Titans. Anyways, this actually turned out to be a good thing in my opinion. Officially being declared a Fallen Titan by the cast of Johnny Test made me sit down and really reevaluate this series, what I thought it meant to be an ex-Titan, and more importantly, what I wanted it to mean. You see, I believe that Fallen Titans has accidentally pushed one of the worst aspects of YouTuber culture, the obsession with power for the sake of power, and worshipping power and influence as the sole defining aspects of what makes your content worthwhile and relevant. Or maybe that's reading a little bit too far into it. Maybe Fallen Titans is still what I intended it to be back when I first started working on it in 2017. A simple video series looking back at old YouTube channels I used to watch when I was a kid. But if that's the case, isn't that a little bit unfair? Here's the honest-to-God truth about a good amount of Fallen Titans episodes. When I cover the content, it's not about the creators.
Don't walk near me.
It's about me. I didn't make a video about Asdeath movie because the show sort of being unfunny is in any way relevant to the modern world. I did it because it represents to me an earlier version of myself who I don't like, and I want to cathartically shit-talk in an indirect way. And when I really sit down to think about what I don't love about my current content, I think about the fact that it's a little unfair that I spend my career digging through the dumpsters of all these other creators when I haven't done the same thing for myself. And why? Because I wasn't famous when I was younger? Because I'm still not famous right now? That's not an excuse. There are no Fallen Titans. It's not a real thing. It's a random term I made up, named after a legend that was so lame that it got retconned over by more interesting legends that people actually care about. Fallen Titans is a nebulous term. No one is a Fallen Titan, and thus anyone can be a Fallen Titan if I decide it that week. Basically, this is going to be an exploration into some of the things that I made before I did YouTube, back when I had dreams and aspirations. This material is going to start off when I was a kid, and it's going to end with my graduation from high school, when I made the true great mistake that turned me into a Fallen Titan, when I began uploading my content to YouTube.
Echo, come. Echo, get it. Echo, no.
We've broken through the clouds and reached the depths of our world. Yet, in search of answers, we find only mysteries. Who knows what power we may find in the dust?
I think we should just take Elder. It's easier. Oh, our team segmenting means we'll be wanting stuff.
Countless civilizations lost to war. 5 dig sites, each shrouding relics of times forgotten. The God Wars are a distant memory, but our struggle is yet to end. The sands of time whisper of greater.
Alright, at least I smite that guy.
Has taught us anything. It's that peace, sanity.
Wait, fuck, I can't. Q.
The tale
I should
of
just
our
fought him, I
past
guess.
is written, but our future story is yours to forge.
Checking. Hello. Thank you. I'm gonna hold him. I'm just.
Oh, wow.
No, what happens if I turn the autofocus on? Goes out of focus. Alright, we're rolling. Say hi. Say hi, everybody. Say how old are we, Mommy? The first time Daddy's got off the sorry bus to put us on film.
Little boy. Little boy. Starting to get sleepy.
That's a bunny. That's a bunny. That's a bunny. Hey, look at the bunny web. We're not quite camera ready yet, are we?
So, a little bit of essential Quentin lore that I don't really talk about a lot on the channel. Before I was born, my dad spent several years creating a series of amateur home movies starring him and his friends. This quickly became his favorite pastime, and I would argue one of the strongest passions of his entire life. After he started having kids, he couldn't exactly keep the hobby hidden from us, so he started making edits of his movies which were supposedly appropriate for children, so we could watch those. As a kid, I grew up knowing these films inside and out. I saw them as exciting character adventures which covered every genre of exciting fiction that I could think of. Undeniably, a lot of my interests in fiction today stem a little bit at least from these corny 90s home movies that literally no one but me has seen, to the point that I often fantasize about being given the chance to readapt them for mainstream audiences. One thing I have started to notice as an adult is that there's the very slightest chance that my father's personal, ideological, and political views subtly found themselves slipping into the characters and world that I was being presented.
Alright, I'm taking over. I want all your property.
Why the hell should we give you all our property?
Because I will kill you if you do not. Very good reason.
There you go!
Anarchy, abolish property, break it off, destroy the state, coup d'etat.
Dear God.
But the biggest lesson that I learned from these films is that there is no litmus test for who can make a movie. All you need is a camera and imagination and a stupid amount of free time to invest into a project that 5 people in the world will ever end up caring about.
Wait, I can't.
By the time I was 9, I had taught myself to video edit by hooking several VCRs into one another. While most kids were playing their Pokemans and their Digidudes, I was firmly in the belief that if I didn't create a cinematic masterpiece by the time I was 11, I would be failing my father's lineage. In preparation for this video, I went back to my family home and basically started looking through as many VHS tapes as I could, trying to find some of those early creations I put together. This turned out to be very strange, as it was basically me rediscovering archives of my state of mind during puberty. Yeah, so I'm going through some of these tapes, and about half of them are really important things, and then the other half of the tapes will just be me dubbing off every Shoop to Whoop video I can find. These are historical artifacts that should be preserved. I wonder, I imagine some of these you can't find anymore, so I've got some lost media on this VHS tape. This is one of my snuff films. Oh my god, look what I found. Get on there. You gotta do that, guys. Head over to 4kids.com. And I did indeed find a lot of my early work. Most of it just passively unwatchable and impossible to explain.
Finally,
For
it's like
instance,
back in the
this
Soviet
movie you're
Union.
watching right now is supposed to be set in space.
Nice.
In the film, I'm also supposed to be
Self damage
fighting
by
an evil version
literally
of
everyone on
myself,
both teams.
but both of us wear the same outfit, so it's impossible to tell if you're watching the evil Quentin or the good Quentin. Basically, while most of these things were neat to rediscover, it's hard to present them to an audience. But after randomly grabbing more VHS tapes that seemed like they might be important, I finally found